If there's a question or two, I'm sure that Sam and Craig would be happy to take them. Are we doing microphones? Are we doing the Phil Donahue thing, or? Okay. Rebecca will, yeah. Or Kate. Kate, we're going to start here. Yeah.
This question is for Sam. Do you anticipate with the Community Right to Know program that there would be funding or technical assistance or fines associated with that for communities?
I don't know. That's a great question. Those are the kinds of things that we really need to start asking. When I brought up the idea, like I said, I'm trying to socialize the idea. That's why I had it on the slide. I think that we need to do a bit of research to understand the implications of eliminating the pipeline exemption for the Community Right to Know Act. There will be some significant impacts from doing that. We don't understand what the impacts would be to the communities. We don't understand what funding impacts would be for a community to now have to consider pipelines in their hazard mitigation plans. There are many questions that need to be asked, and that is a very good one. So I'm sorry I can't answer it now, but it's an idea that we want to explore and we intend to.
Sarah has a question.
You have to run around, don't you? So thank you. I mean, this is a great topic. I feel, I guess I would say I think there's a real difference between risk education and risk communication and involvement and partnership. And it seems to me like we're still stuck on the one-way educational model here. And I think there have been a lot of studies, and people have, I know in agencies like EPA, worked on thinking about sort of how do you communicate with the public about risk. And one of the main things that comes out of that literature is that you have to understand how the public thinks about risk in order to be able to communicate with them about it. And the public thinks about pipeline risk in a very particular way, right? I mean, these are, as we all know, low probability, high consequence events. They're dread risks. People worry about them more. And they don't understand the technology because they're not pipeline experts. And so I think when we think about how to require people to do communication, I think you start with figuring out how people understand the pipeline risk first. And then you build your communications around that, rather than saying, here's what we want to tell people about pipelines. And I think also that starts with understanding that what we're doing here is we're communicating about risk, not necessarily about safety, right? It's a low risk, but it's still a risk. And if you communicate that it's about safety, you communicate that everything's fine and people don't pay attention. So I guess I would just encourage, I mean, I come out of the academic world, but there's a lot of really interesting sort of academic work on this and sort of reports that have been done. I know for EPA, for FEMA, I believe. I mean, there are just a number of places where I think this literature helps to support a more robust risk communication system, and I feel like that could be very useful. And I guess the final thing I would say is this big issue around sort of how you do these requirements and whether you do it through a industry standard or a regulation. I think it matters a lot that you do it through a regulation. I think this is a big area where the regulatory framework that we've set up through notice and comment really matters, both for optics and for the types of information and the way that PHMSA can think through the issues can go through rulemaking. So, thanks.
And I would just add one thing to Sarah's remarks, and that is that a pleasant side effect of honest conversations about risk, conversations that are two-way conversations, is that will go a long way toward building the trust that Craig talked about. So,
got a couple thoughts on that. You've got an audience that does need to know that there is risk, and they need to know what to do. They need to know if there's a problem. You've got to get that communicated. And the other thing that we feel like at the same time, you want to help us minimize the likelihood of that bad thing happening, protect our pipeline. We'll guard your safety, you guard our safety, and the probability gets diminished. They do need to know if something bad happens, what to do. And I think that you're communicating all this to an audience who probably doesn't want to take the time to listen. And so you have to get past that barrier. So be careful about making it too complicated. Be very careful, and you have to be very precious with the time and energy that the people are going to put to it. And as you're writing that new reg, you're going to want to probably err towards prescriptive. So we've been on the other side of the audits going through these prescriptive standards, and by gosh, we're going to get those boxes checked because we know more enforcement's coming, right? We had that before, so we're going to make sure those boxes get checked. You don't necessarily need to confuse that with effectiveness. So that's where the performance and prescriptive, it's a tension that you've got to work through so you get something that works.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is a great place for performance standards. I think the whole point is the performance is the public understanding the risk, right? I mean, creativity in communication is exactly what you need to incentivize here. And so checking the boxes is the least of the things that would be helpful in this kind of environment.
Yeah, so Sarah, say performance, this is a good place for performance standards. Yeah.
Absolutely. But then you're precise about measuring what this actually does. It's not the number of mailings, right? It's whether people understand the pipeline risk and can respond.
That part of public awareness ought to be altering people's behavior, and that can be measured concretely. Yeah. Last point, and then we'll wrap it up.
I'll be very brief on this. So you go around, you sit down at these tables, and you say, after you establish a relationship and they're talking to you and they realize you're not trying to peddle something other than call 811, okay, so now you know there's a Maryland pipeline in your backyard, basically. What's it made of? Plastic? Aluminum? What's in it? They may not even know the commodities or appreciate the commodities that are being transported. They probably don't, as a matter of fact. And so, anyway, you got to be real. So do you want everyone to know that? And you know what? It's probably not necessary, but you have the information available, and that's what you do. If you want more, here's where you go. So anyway, the audience it's pretty interesting when you ask basic questions. And these are the rare folks who took the time to go to the High State Fair and sit down, and it's a small population of the whole population.
Thank you.